Welcome to what happened on Saturday, Marlon. How you doing?
Josh, I'm doing well. How about yourself?
I am great. It's bowl season, Marlon. And before we get into the upcoming games, this Saturday is kind of like the appetizer, right? Like the real
Right.
small plates before we really dig into bowl season. I'd like to take you way back to the early '90s and maybe get some of your bowl game experiences, memories, what you liked, what you didn't like, what kind of swag you got. Just kind of give people a sense of what going to a bowl game meant, back when you played.
That was kind of like the culmination of a hard season, right? Like we you didn't have the playoff system as it is now. We didn't even I was before the BCS era, so you didn't even have the go to a bowl and then one or anything like that. It was literally writers deciding how you played, how you looked, and hopefully you played well enough. If you won the Big Ten and ran the table and got to play in the Rose Bowl, because that's where we were slated to go. Like the winner of the Big Ten had a date with the winner of the Pac-12 or Pac-10 back then, and they would be able to go in and then be able to play each other in the Rose Bowl, and then hopefully you would then get voted by all the writers and the coaches, and you would either be hopefully number one in both the AP and the coaches poll. So we went to 4 bowl games. I think I went to the Hall of Fame Bowl twice, the Citrus Bowl once my senior year, and then the Holiday Bowl my junior year. And so really cool because it was you work all up through the season. You go through all the 2-a-days, and we had 3 days when I was at Ohio State. And you do all that hard work, and then the bowl game was kind of like, okay, last game of the season, you can build some momentum, and mostly everybody played in it. Right? So you really didn't have what you have now, where guys that are projected to go to the NFL, where they would not play in a bowl game now. We all played, and so it's kind of the last time you might get to play with one of your favorite teammates or play with your roommate, whether it's you live with them during the course of just everyday life, or whether they were your road roommate, because you had different players you always had that you were hanging out with or that you were assigned to, and you shared rooms. So you kind of had your whole routine built around each other. So this would be the culmination of 4 years or 3 years of being around somebody, a really good player that might be going off to the NFL. So you kind of wanted to make sure you played in that game. And I think for me, there were 2 bowl games that stood out. One of them being the Holiday Bowl, because we won that game. And it was bittersweet for me because actually today, being the 30-year anniversary of the passing of one of my teammates, a high school teammate and college teammate, Jason Gwynn, who was a phenomenal football player, definitely would have been a first-round draft pick, but an even better individual, a better human being, like had the biggest smile, the best personality, so funny. Everybody got along with him. And I remember just waking up to that phone call from my aunt, like, hey, I don't know how to tell you this. Jason passed away in a car crash last night. And I'm just like, this is crazy because it was kind of that bowl practice. Like, and so before I go into that, I'll set up, like, cause people are like, well, what does it look like when you go to a bowl game, right? Like,
Sure.
you're finishing up classes right now. So right now everyone's finishing up classes, and then you get a schedule of what the practice is going to look like. If you're staying in the dorms, you have to be out by a specific time. So they would put you into a hotel at some point in time. So we were all at this point and stage of it was getting close. You all get put up. You may try to catch up with family if you have family local to do your Christmas exchange, or depending on when the bowl game was played. We went out early for Christmas. So we went out there and spent time out there because you go out a week before the game is played. And I want to say we played, it was like on the 28th or 29th. So we would go out a little bit early before Christmas as a team. But I just remember that weekend when Jason passed away, we were all going to go out. We had just kind of started the bowl practice and trying to we were 10-1-1. We had lost to Michigan again. Jay Reamersma. But, so we're just kind of trying to figure out where we're going. We could not play in the Rose Bowl because we tied Wisconsin, and Wisconsin hadn't been to the Rose Bowl in like 40 years, and we hadn't gone in like 30 something years. And so they took whoever hadn't gone in the longest.
Wow.
And so after that happened, they actually changed the rule that the presidents can actually vote on who they would like to represent if there's a tie. So because of that tie, they changed the rules, kind of make sure that it didn't happen again. And if you thought there was a better team that maybe should have represented your conference, they would be able to have a way to have a fail safe to make sure they got there. So we go out, and then I decide that I'm not going to go out. We had all talked as a team, like we're all going to go out. There was one little spot we had on campus that we all went out at. And so I didn't go. I just decided to hang out. You know, I was dating a young lady then, and you know, it was like, you never hang out. Like, you're always hanging out with the football players. Like, you're always hanging out with the guys. Like, spend some time with me. So I said, okay, fine. What do you want to do? We just hung out at home and watched the movie. And then I'm feeling already somewhat guilty because in my mind, I'm thinking, if I'm there, I could have prevented this. So there was some drama that took place. One of our players ended up getting injured because shots were fired in the small little area. So Jason took him to the hospital, and then Jason ended up getting into the fatal car crash coming from dropping off and staying with our teammate at that time. So I ended up wearing his number for that game, but I was also coming off a knee injury, and so we were playing BYU, and it sticks out to me just because they like to pass the ball a lot, and more than what we saw in the Big Ten. We were definitely more used to a run first team, and I definitely probably had like the worst game that you could ever play as a corner, because mentally all I wanted to do was play well to honor Jason's memory. And so I probably should not have started that game. They Coach Cooper and team probably should have said, and the coaches that probably should have said, look, we want you to play. We want you to play well, but emotionally, you're not there. You're not where you should be. Mentally, you're not where you should be. I had so many thoughts going in my head, made uncharacteristic errors, just mental mistakes, because I wanted to play so well that I got beside myself. I was so high emotionally that I wasn't focused on playing football because I just wanted to play well to honor Jason's memory. Thankfully, my teammates definitely picked up where I left off and didn't really play well that game. And other guys stepped up. Raymond Harris being
well, yeah. I
Raymond
have the
Harris
box score here. I got the box score here, Marlon. All right, couple things. So first of all, how many days before the bowl game did your friend pass away?
I want to say probably it happened in December, so probably a couple weeks.
Was there
maybe
any thought
10,
to not playing?
10 or 14 days.
Was there any thought?
For me, it wasn't a thought that we weren't going to not play. We were going to go as a team and play and represent Jason and play in his memory and his honor.
Okay, so did you remember the BYU quarterback John Walsh?
John Walsh, yes.
He had 389 yards passing that day, Marlon. I was gonna ask you about that.
Like,
389 yards. Like, you had 7 tackles. What catches my eye here is Raymond Harris had 39 rushes for 235 yards. What a different day and age in college football, right? Like a back having 39 carries. Your quarterbacks went 6 of 13 for 61 yards. Bobby Hoying and then Brett Powers went 1 for 2. Man, you had 6 completions and one running back had 39 carries. Crazy.
It was.
And you had Joey Galloway on that team.
Raymond left, Raymond right, Raymond up the middle. Like, they could not stop him. It was a classic case of do what you do best, right? So BYU threw the ball, and they threw the ball a lot. And when you don't play passing teams, you don't understand, like, okay, how the timing, sometimes like you just have to get into it. And again, I just played a horrible game that game. Like, there were so many mental errors that I had, like just staying in position, like stay in your back pedal, turn the right way. Like, it wasn't like we didn't know what they were going to do. They just executed it really well. But then they would take little completions, you know, like, just like you're taught, like, hey, if they're going to give you a short route, take it. Like, they'll take the short route, maybe make a guy miss. Tight end jumped over one of our guys for a really big play. I think they had a tight end that we played man-to-man. We played man-to-man press coverage. I'm 5'11" and some change, so we'll say 6 foot, just to round it up. Let's round it up. Like, but so, you know, you think about stuff like that, and they had like a tight end that was like 6'6", right? And we're playing inside technique against a passing team, all out blitz. Here you go, no safety help, and they run a fade. Like, we're in that scheme of how you want to play the defense. Where would you want the ball to go? To the 6'6" tight end that's lined up at the 10-yard line or 10 or 15-yard line, running a fade route, and you're like, hey, he's going to play you inside coverage, and I just got to throw the ball to the outside pylon. Like just simple things where you're like, okay, like this is interesting. So again, different time, different technique, how you're taught how to play and do those things. And so that was one of those things we just needed to get better at doing that. But again, they couldn't stop Raymond because we were left definitely a run first team. And yes, we did have Joey Galloway and Chris Sanders, and Terry Glenn was on that roster, and we had D Miller, who was a top recruit, Buster Tillman, another top recruit. Like we had weapons. Demetrius Stanley was one of our teammates. He came up, he was there on that team then. So when you think about, we had a lot of weapons, but they just couldn't stop Raymond. Like Raymond got going early, so we just said we're going to feed Raymond, and
So
Raymond ran left, ran right. It was crazy.
Yeah. So a game like that, obviously BYU back then was known, high flying.
Yeah,
I wouldn't call it gimmicky, but they had their style. They were a West Coast team known for throwing the ball. Ty Detmer, all those guys.
Yep.
You guys were 3 yards of cloud dust. The Buckeyes, all that. Like, was that kind of one of the appeals of a bowl game? Is that you were going to go play somebody completely different than Ohio State, Iowa, Wisconsin? You've been playing Big Ten conference football for the last 9 games, and it's always
right.
Everybody's kind of the same. And this is clearly very different. Were you guys just physically bigger than them? Like when you walked,
we definitely had the size advantage. We had so many. Like, I mean, when I think about it, we had Dan Wilkinson, who's 6'6", 330. He was listed as that. Ran a 4.7 40. That was his last game. He came out, ended up being the #1 overall pick by the Cincinnati Bengals. So I mean, we had on both sides of the ball, we definitely had the size. They had the experience of that, get the ball out, throw the ball where you needed to be. We had Lorenzo Styles at linebacker. We had Craig Powell at linebacker. And these were big guys, big, formidable guys that could play, that could stuff the run. Craig was probably a little bit more leaner and was better in space. Lorenzo definitely, he would stop the run. And so when you come in, like, they had a really good game plan to take away of what we like to do. They had a game plan for when we played press. They had a game plan for when we played off, and then we just started playing off. And so once you start playing off, yeah, I mean, they're going to run. They're going to take hitches. They were taking hitches 6-7 yards here, and then they would run. Sometimes they might run a little hitch and go on us. But when we would play man, when they recognized we were in the man, and we would play like a lot of inside technique, try to bring pressure. They picked it up. They were pretty good at being able to pick up that pressure that we did. And so they completed some deep balls. I remember one of them I just remember thinking, hold the inside position. And I looked at the game film and I'm just like, you know what? I held the inside position all the way up until the last second. I'm like, I'm right there. I knew he was going to run. And then for whatever reason, at the last second, I was like, man, like, when is this dude going to break? Right. And I'm still in my back pedal. And I'm talking about back pedal for like 15, 20 yards down the field. Like, he never threatened me. And then the last second, he broke inside where I was already positioned inside. And he made like one little step outside. And then I went and took that little fake. And then he broke back inside. I'm like, shoot. And you're just like, okay, just poor technique. Again, when mentally, when you're thinking so much like, I've got to make a play. Because that only thing I kept thinking of during that whole process was, I've got to make a play. I've got to make a play for Jason. I wore 46 in college. Jason wore 49. So I was wearing 49 in his honor. And that's all I kept thinking about. I got to make a play for Jason. I got to make a play for Jason. I got to get a pick.
You want it too much, right?
I wanted it so bad that I forgot the game plan. I forgot everything that we were supposed to do. I just played like the worst game ever. And just because mentally I was not there, because I wanted to be so much better in this game, in his memory, that I kind of forgot, like, wait a minute, you need to ground yourself. Like, you need to come back and step back and ground yourself.
It's funny you say that. I would say one of the criticisms or one of the observations that, like, the quote unquote common fan will say when they're watching an NFL game or a college game, how come these guys aren't fired up? How come the quarterback is sitting by himself when when the defense is on the field? And I think what people maybe lose sight of is just how much is going through your head. Like, how much you need to ground yourself. You need to get back into the moment. How much is, how technical the game is. And if you're running around like a lunatic, the entire time, or pressing too hard, or trying to play emotional football all of the time, you're going to be your own worst enemy. You're going to be a detriment
Right.
to yourself and to the team. And I think people don't recognize, or maybe have a hard time putting themselves in a position like yours. You can't be in an emotional like frenzy for 3.5 hours and play sound, fundamental, good, smart football. Like, it just,
Absolutely.
those two things don't happen. And when I see like our local quarterback sitting on the bench, even after a pick or something, and I hear people, oh, he's in one of those trances again, and it's like, wait a minute, you let the dude clear his head. Like, there's so much going through that head that him running around trying to fire up, the third defensive tackle, like, that's not what we want. Like, we want regulation, and of course you want some emotion, but man, you can't carry emotion like you're telling us so eloquently here. You can't carry that for 4 hours from pregame through the first half, halftime, third quarter, whatever. Last question on this game. So, and it really kind of speaks to a lot of these like fun bowl games where there's interconference matchups, West Coast, East Coast, different styles. Mm-hmm. You guys probably had the 10, 15 best athletes on the field that day. It kind of reminds me of one of those like YMCA games where the one team's got like all the fundamentally sound guys, and they run their scheme and they've been together for a long time. But if you roll the ball out on the court, you wouldn't pick one of those dudes in the first 10. Is that kind of fair to say?
You know what? Yeah, I thought, and they probably had a couple offensive linemen or so that might have made it to the league to play after that. I mean, but when you think about it, they didn't have like your prototypical style wide receivers that you would have. They just had guys that were scrappy. They had guys, they were athletic and they were athletes. So definitely not saying that they weren't athletic at all. But when you think about what the NFL was back when I was coming out, like the NFL had a standard, a prototypical standard, and you had to either be a really big receiver, or if you were 5'10", 6 foot or under, then you were considered a shifty guy. You had to be really fast and be able to run 4.4, 4.3, 4.2 or faster. Joey Gallo ran a 4.17. So when you think about all those things, like, they didn't fit the mold for some of those guys, and what the prototypical style, what the NFL was looking for back then. But definitely they had a scheme that they ran and they executed to it. And they had a tradition, like, that was, and I believe the head coach then was Lavelle Edwards. So we knew, like, if you played college football, you knew who Lavelle Edwards was, you knew what he was able to accomplish with that program. So going up against him was a really good test. It helped you really see something different that you didn't see from the Big Ten, because the Big Ten is not what it was when I played. It wasn't what it is now, where you spread it out and you do all things. That's not what we did. Like, 2 tight ends, you might go, double tight, 2 wide, you might flex your back out, you might do some interesting thing, like, but you didn't go 4 or 5 wides all the time. That was considered run and shoot, and that was Andre Ware in Houston and that type of offense. That's how they did it back then. So it was just a different way to see it, and I really enjoyed the experience of being out there in San Diego for the Holiday Bowl. It was a really great experience. You get to spend so much time meeting the players and talking to the players from the other opposing teams. So you build certain friendships, kind of like, and then you go out there and you're like, man, like, that's supposed to be my friend, and he's out here trying to cook me, So all those things happen. We were out there for about a week. We were there for about a week.
So did you get some beach time? Did you get some downtime?
You got a little bit of downtime. They had everything kind of structured. That's the thing about the bowl games. Like, you'd have practice and they might have an event that you go to, and they would have certain events that luncheons that you would show up at, and then you'd have certain events you go to. Like, I think we did an event on the naval carrier out in the Bay. So you had like all these things that they kind of had, like, they structured your time, and that they put so much time around you that you can kind of have, where each team was together. Then you'd have some time for yourself. But really, it wasn't too much. I think the best bowl game was the Citrus Bowl, because that was in Orlando. So we got to go to Disneyland. And so that was cool. So I went to Disneyland on Christmas Day that year. I think we went down there a little early. We were probably down there for about 10 days. So it was a little bit longer. And I enjoyed it. I really, that was the first time I said I've never experienced Christmas in shorts. It was like 80 degrees and I'm in shorts and a t-shirt. Like, I think I can live in Florida, and I think I can live without snow.
And little did you know where you were going to be drafted, buddy.
And then I ended up in Buffalo.
Where you were going to be drafted. Yeah. Was it hard? Was it hard going down and practicing and playing in Orlando after being, in Columbus and all the cold weather for the last couple months? Was that an adjustment?
No, because we had our own indoor bubble. We had our own indoor facility. So when it got too cold and we couldn't really get out there, we were able to kind of do what we needed to do indoor. So I was always there and ready and good to go as far as what that looked like. But it wasn't hard. I love playing on grass, and we played on a grass surface in Columbus. It wasn't the field turf that they have now. So for me, I love the grass. It was short in Florida. They had that sand in their grass, and it was a really fast turf. And so we love playing on that type of grass because you could wear your Nike Speed TDs and get after it. Like, you know what? I can make every cut on this grass. It's not going to get chewed up. The way they made it, it was just fun to go down there. And again, it was the last game. It was my senior year, so it was just the last time to play with guys that we knew they were going to either go on to different lives. Some of us are going to go and play in the NFL, and some of us weren't. And so again, it was like that last game. You just wanted to kind of go out and like, let me go play the best of my ability for the brothers that I've been around with for the last 4 years. And we ended up losing late that game. Sherman Williams caught. Again, we like to run all-out blitzes, and we ran an all-out blitz, and the defensive end was supposed to peel back and get the running back. And I mean, a defensive end on a shifty running back, yeah,
that's a recipe for disaster.
That's a recipe for disaster. And we were all inside technique, all blitz, all out. Defensive end was not going to win that foot race, and they had a great play call against that formation of what we set up. And he flipped it over, just barely got it over the defensive end. And I want to say it was either Finkus or Vrabel, one of those guys. And he got it over his hand, and the rest is history. He takes off. He scores the game-winning touchdown.
50-yard touchdown. Sherwin Williams from Jay Barker with 42 seconds left. 63-play drive or 63-yard drive. Do you get anything extra if you win the game? Do you get a ring? Do you get anything if you win a bowl game?
No, we didn't get anything extra for that. You just kind of got, you get like it's not like it is now. Like the gifts and things they get now is not like you don't get game systems and things like that. We got watches. We got a little bit of some T-shirts, sweatsuits, and things with the logo on it. Like, so you would get like Citrus Bowl logo, and then it would have Ohio State's logo, and then our colors, whatever we picked. So I think ours was black and red, and then you would get some other things and a watch. I think they sent us a watch and a few things. So you got some really cool stuff out of it. But outside of that, like now what they give out in the swag bags for bowl games, definitely it has come a long way.
Did your family get to go to these games? Was there any kind of like, did they get any assistance to travel? Like, was there anything like that? Or was everybody just kind of on their own?
You kind of on your own. Like sometimes family would, they would kind of get when they would come down. And if you kind of had significant others, like a couple of guys, I think I had one guy that was married. So I think he was able to bring his spouse down for that trip. But outside of that, really, you didn't really do too much. Like you didn't really, you kind of let your family know, like, hey, here's where we're staying. You ordered your tickets and all those things that you could do normally for that bowl game, but they had to get themselves down there.
Okay. So, bringing that into to today, do you think if you were in the same position that you were in 30 years ago, say that Citrus Bowl, you think you would have played in the bowl game?
For me, I would have played, yes, because for me, it was one more game to kind of show that, yes, I could work on a few things. And then my senior year didn't go the way our senior year as a team, we thought we were going to come back and build upon that 10-1-1 season and go back and win 10 or more games again. And we lost some games early. And so for me, I was like, and I played up and down all season long, just trying to figure everything out. And I think we talked about that earlier in the season about some of the things and some of the ordeals that I went through that season from separated shoulder. I had a grade 3 separation in the AC joint and could not bench press the entire season and ended up playing. They were like, you're going to miss 4 to 6 weeks. And I missed 4 days. And so could not lift my shoulder this high for at least a good month. And so trying to play and do all those things while navigating an injury, but most people don't know about that because you don't talk about, well, hey, I can't really make this tackle. I can't use my right shoulder and all these things. Like you just go out there and play. And so we always aired on the side of, I'm going to try to play the best that I can. And so I would literally get like a little pad that I would put on my shoulder and then put that over my shoulder pads to hope that I didn't jam it or do anything or make it any worse. Because the ultimate, if I did anything more damage, then I would have had to have surgery on it. Then I would have been out for the season. So I was just really trying to make sure I got it through. I made through that season. And then everything else is just more of just trying to make sure you kind of get through everything else, right? You kind of go through that, you do all those things. So because I was up and down and was just trying to go back and so like, listen, I kind of turned it around that second half of the season and just kind of said, you know what, I'm gonna just go play football because I love the game of football and no other reason. So outside after that happened, I played better. And so for me, I was like, I just want one more game to show that I can play and do some things differently. And then I ended up thankfully got to play in the Senior Bowl, which will be coming up after all the bowl seasons in January. Everything ends, and then went to the combine, and then the rest is history. Then did some workouts for scouts and on pro days, and then ended up getting drafted by the Bills, which I didn't know they were interested in drafting me. So
what was it like for the guys who knew it was their last football game?
It's bittersweet, right? Like you're kind of like, again, you're trying to go in and say, okay, this is it. This is the last time that I'm going to show what I can do on the field. So if you're trying to kind of increase your stats, because they still count it for your stats, right? So if you're a receiver, you wanted to try to make sure if they thought you should go off, you wanted to make sure you went off and you had a great game, and you kind of show like this is why you should consider drafting me to your team. If you're a defensive back, you just want to make sure you high point balls, you make sure you make good tackles, you make sure, if you face adversity in the game, you show how you can come back from it. You stand there, you answer questions at the end of it because you have a whole week to kind of get prepped. So you see the media there the entire week that they're talking to you. You build relationships kind of with people. Hey, Marlon, what about this? Hey, Marlon, what about that game? How does it feel about this? You guys are going up against the mighty SEC and Alabama, and what does that look like? The Big Ten versus the SEC, like who's the better conference? Like you answer all those questions going through it. And then you just kind of make sure, like, listen, at the end of the day, we've got to go line up and play a game. And you're hopeful that your team comes out on the victory.
Sure.
And we played well enough to win. It just wasn't our day on that day. They had a really good game, a good play called against a formation. We had ran a couple times in the game and was able to shut it down. We got good pressure. But this time they made a good shift and a change. Like the back would flare. So it made it easy for the end to get there. This time he flared, but he went up the field. He got up the field quickly. And so because of that, it was an easier throw for him. Jay Barker didn't have to hold it. So it was kind of a good little adjustment on what we were doing against them. And the pressure was almost there, right? Like that's
almost there.
You're just like almost there, but wasn't there.
Not that you don't remember it. Not that you don't remember that player.
Not that I don't remember that at all.
So for your buddies on the team who were not going to be drafted, the guys who knew, you see that famous scene in Rudy, right, in high school, his last high school practice, where it's like, okay, this is it for you. Like your career is over here. Like for your friends on the team who really didn't have NFL prospects, were there tears after the game? Was it relief, joy? Like how about those guys?
A little bit of everything. Some guys were just like, man, I can't believe we lost our last game. Tears of joy, tears of sadness because you're like, man, this is the last time we're all going to be together. Like, some of them are going on like, hey, I'm graduating. I'm going on and go do, I'm getting a degree in finance and I'm going on and get a job and just go back and do that. But, you take like, hey, listen, this is my brother for life. So that's it. You just kind of like that bond that's always going to be held with like, these are my guys. And you, now that you have Facebook and social media, it makes it a lot easier to connect with some of those guys that maybe you lost contact with over the years. Because, so we didn't have cell phones yet, you didn't really, pagers were just starting to come out. So it was just kind of one of those things like, how do you stay in contact with somebody who maybe have changed their number 3 or 4 times? And so Facebook has been a great way to kind of get back together and reconnect with guys that maybe you played with. But yeah, it's kind of one of those bittersweet. I wasn't sure what it would look like. So for me, it was kind of like, all right, what happens next? Okay, well, hopefully I get back home and I get invited to the Senior Bowl, which I did because that's the next step that you have to kind of show scouts that, okay, I can play at this level. And so myself and one of my teammates, Chris Sanders, we both got invited to come down to the Senior Bowl and play. So we went down there and played. And then
we're going to talk about that in a couple of weeks. I look forward to.
So that was fun to kind of go through that process.
Sure.
And then you hope you get to the combine because only 300 and something guys go, or a little over 300 get there. So again, I got invited to the combine, and so that's kind of your thought process. What happens next, and how do I train? Because now you're a senior. And you never know if you're going to get drafted or not. Like they can tell you, you may go here and here, but that's all speculation. So all you can do is just be prepared for, your pro day, and everyone's open to pro day. So even those guys who maybe thought that, hey, I don't know, if they were a physical specimen and maybe they came and ran something, you never know. Maybe somebody will sign you as an undrafted free agent, and you try and figure out what that looks like. But outside of that, it was just more of a, you just kind of like, I kind of thought about it like, all right, season ended. I had some good moments. I had some not so good moments that I would love to take back, but I wouldn't change any of it because it helped me become a better football player and a better individual, in this big old thing, grand scheme of life. Right. So I take all those lessons learned, and then I say, okay, now how, if I got to the next level, how would I incorporate these lessons? What would I do differently getting there? And so it was just, once you got back and you got on your plane, well, we went back to the hotel, spent the night, and then got up and flew out the next day. You're kind of like, you get back in town, you're like, all right, what does that look like next?
Yeah. Do you?
And I just kind
So
of got
next,
ready. That was it.
sure. Next year's your 30th anniversary of your senior year, and I know you mentioned to me you might think about going back for the Ohio State Michigan game. Have you ever been together as a team? Like since then, do they do like 10, 20, 30-year reunions as a team? Like how many of the guys have you maintained contact with? I think people would be interested to know, how close can you keep with guys 30 years past?
When we were playing, it was definitely a lot easier to stay in contact with Joey, guys like Joey, Terry, because we would play against each other. And then as the years get over, like once I was done playing, I stayed in Buffalo, so I didn't stay in Columbus. A lot of guys do stay in Columbus, so there's definitely guys I go back and I see them from time to time, but I haven't gone back in a while. So I definitely need to get back. I think the last time we all got together, I want to say Braxton Miller was the quarterback. They played Wisconsin, and they were celebrating we ended up winning. We were co-champions of the Big Ten. So we had a Big Ten co-championship with Wisconsin my junior year in 93. And they were recognizing that team. So I went back for that game, got to hang out with all of my guys that on that team, just had a good time, just reconnecting. So I reconnected with a lot of guys then. And then most of it is just, we touch base. Some guys we'll still text. Obi still well. We text from time to time. A lot of guys I just connect with on Facebook, so we talk that way. But I definitely need to get back. You kind of forget about it. Like when you get away, you kind of put your head down. So I'm that guy that's guilty of, I'm just on to the next phase. Like I'm just trying to grind and get going and do all these things, and then you kind of forget. Like, wait a minute. Like now that we're getting older, you're like, wait,
it's been 30
some
years.
guys are no longer with us. Like, and some guys aren't with us. You're like, man, like I can't believe how fast time goes by. And you're like, man, we should have definitely done more and stayed in contact. So I can recognize my own shortcomings as far as making sure that I do a better job of reaching out to guys and staying connected. But definitely life hit all of us and we all went on different paths. And so I'm hopeful that there's something that we can do to get back together and connect and just kind of talk about those times, because those were good times. Like whether we, the people like how we played on the field or not, when we overall record against Michigan, sorry about that. It wasn't that we didn't try hard, just we came up short. And so
do guys in okay, so I kind of have this picture or this idea, like a place like Ohio State in Columbus, guys who played there, guys like you, guys who played well, you'd be a name who people would remember and recognize in Columbus. Is that guys who stay there? Is that like kind of one of those things where there's always going to be a job available? Like there's always going to be, some opportunity, okay. Just talk to me about that for a minute. Like, what's it like if you went to Ohio State, you played 4 years, you made your mark, and then you stayed in Columbus? Like, is it like Friday Night Lights? Is it, you're kind of a big man, small town?
It would be like Friday Night Lights. And for me, I'm from Columbus. So I was born and raised. I grew up there. I played high school football there, played in the City League, represented Brookhaven High School. Myself, was the first from Brookhaven to go to Ohio State, and then the Ohio State University, and then followed by Terry Glenn, and then Jason and Anthony Gwynn, and then their younger brother Justin ended up going to Ohio State. So we ended up sending 5 guys that I knew of to Ohio State, and one other person from Brookhaven ended up going to Ohio State. His name was Maurice Hall, and he was a running back, and so we had a really good program, and we sent a lot of guys to Division I schools, a lot of guys to some MAC schools, but then we sent some guys like the guys I mentioned to Ohio State, and we sent June Hindley, who was a really good running back that I played with as well. He wanted to be a running back. Ohio State wanted him to play corner. So he decided to go play running back, and he went to Kansas, and he still has the Kansas freshman rushing record. I want to say he rushed for like 1,100 yards as a freshman at the University of Kansas. So we just had a really good program. We were taught some really good fundamentals. I made the switch from quarterback to cornerback. So it was just a learning experience for me. So, people are always like, well, what, when they think about it, like, dude, like, I don't think you understand. Like, I made the leap from playing quarterback in high school, throwing the ball to Terry, Glenn, and guys like that, to playing corner at the highest level. And I really didn't play corner in high school. Like, I started learning how to play corner. And I got 2 games. And I got selected to the all-state game and played. That was my first time playing corner. And then I played another area all-star game at corner. Ended up having a pick 6 for a touchdown. I guess pick 6 is redundant for a touchdown. So pick 6 and like 11 tackles that game. And so that's when I was kind of like, oh, I think I can learn how to play corner. But I was trying to figure it out, like how to play all the little nuances.
Sure.
So every year was like a little learning experience for me. Like, here's a little nuance on how to play the position. Here's another nuance you need to kind of figure out how to play the position. And so to go from that to then getting drafted was a pretty cool feat, considering I didn't grow up and play corner. Like, I grew up thinking I was going to play quarterback or receiver
at Notre Dame,
even a running back. At Notre Dame. At Notre Dame.
For God's team, you were going to play for God's team. So
I was going to be a Golden Domer.
A guy like you, if you lived in Columbus still, somebody like you,
always opportunities to do things, whether it be public speaking. I would have had plenty of opportunities to kind of go and be an ambassador for the program. Could have done some TV. Would have had an opportunity to do TV and things like that. Coaching opportunities would have been there. And then just people that there's always opportunities like, hey, you're a Buckeye. Okay, come work for me. Like, I want an athlete. Stryker is one of the organizations that still a lot of Buckeyes went and worked for Stryker medical sales, and they take former athletes, including NFL athletes as well, just because the competition, the way that we're hardwired, and so those opportunities ought to have been there. I think there was Worthington Steel was a big organization that a lot of people worked for back then when I was coming out. So it's definitely different. Columbus definitely looks different now. And the landscape, it's more, I would even almost say it's almost like the new version of Silicon Valley. Like, there's a lot of tech companies now coming into Columbus and trying to do some things. So if you're into tech, that's a good place to go, and it's easy to get to. You can drive anywhere in the country there, and you can get flights in and out and get all over the country. So definitely Columbus has grown. It looks totally different. A lot of cornfields when I was there, and now it's a lot of new builds and a lot of new buildings and a lot of new everything. But definitely, if I had stayed, the opportunities definitely would have been really good to kind of use the Ohio State leverage that I had instead of, and maybe not so much Bills, because that's kind of Browns and Bengals country that way.
Sure. Do most guys, the guys you stay in contact with, is it some guys just want to get away from, where they went to college? Because I could feel like it might be a little bit of a fishbowl for a guy like you, right? If you grew up there, you played there, you went there, you're always known as Marlon, who was a Buckeye. Like, after a while, you're kind of pigeonholed as, the Buckeye Marlon Kerner, right. So do a lot of guys after college, like, leave and go somewhere else? Like, do a lot of guys stick around? What's the percentage you think of guys who have stayed in Columbus?
That I'm not sure. I think a lot of guys will stay. Like, if you're not sure what you want to do, or if you're trying to get experience, you stay in Columbus, because you're going to get an opportunity to show what you're made of, just because of the connections that you're going to have and what they do, especially now, the way they set up things and just with NIL and the way Ohio State has had internships and things set up. You're going to get an opportunity to do something and work for one of the major organizations there. And there's so many alumni that owns corporations, from Les Wexner to, you can just name it, right? Like, I can go down a list and tell you about, well, this guy owns this and this guy owns that.
I want you to be on our softball team, right?
Right. Like, come do this, come do that. So the opportunity is definitely there. So I think a lot of guys, even if you want to leave Columbus, you can get a really good start with an organization, and you can be upfront and say, hey, I eventually want to get out of here. But I want to put roots down here and kind of cut my teeth, so to speak, and learn the ropes. And then when an opportunity to go somewhere else opens, then you can take that. And I think that's the best thing about going to a really big a big school like Ohio State is there's so many alumni. That network is so huge. And once you graduate and then you add the fact that there's that network, that alumni network for athletes is still there as well. So you can go a lot of different pathways and have a lot of different doors open for you, because you can just say OH anywhere in an airport and somebody's going, yeah, back IO. so any
great.
listener thinking about it, just walk into an airport and just say OH, and I guarantee you'll get about 10 people to yell back IO.
Right. It's just like it's just doing hey anywhere in the country, and you're gonna probably get some response back. That's funny. So let's bring it back to today, and the start of bowl season on this Saturday. And
I'm happy. It's bowl season. Let's go.
Yeah, right. I missed Sunday with my birthday, and it's the worst week of college football. I mean, God bless the Army Navy game. God bless the kids that play the Army Navy game. It's just a tough watch, and I ended up watching the end of it, and came down to the last play of the game, which it always seems to be a scrum at the goal line, no matter how the game is played out, whatever else. It seems to be a one-score game, and one team is within 5 yards of the goal line at the end of the game. But that and the Heisman Trophy ceremony just don't move the needle for me after championship week and the rivalry week after Thanksgiving. It just feels like such a letdown, on my birthday weekend every year, because it always feels like college football's over. The fact that bowl season starts even earlier than ever, and there's like 6 games, on Saturday. Let's get right into it, right? You don't know who's playing. Guys are going to be missing, players, but there's going to be a lot of young players in a lot of these games. Our friend of the show, Jeff Burris, and his Louisiana Raging Cajuns are playing in the New Orleans Bowl on Saturday at 2:00 against Jacksonville State. So just, some kind of fun matchups here, and a lot of kind of clash of styles and clash of, a clash of regions to get Georgia Southern against Ohio. It's a MAC team, playing Georgia Southern at 11 in the morning where are they playing this game? In Myrtle Beach.
Myrtle Beach. Yeah, the Myrtle Beach Bowl.
The Myrtle Beach Bowl, 11 a.m. on Saturday, the 16th. The Ohio Bobcats, who play UB every year, is playing Georgia Southern. Any of these games stick out to you? Any names? Any locations?
It's going to be fun to watch the New Orleans Bowl. I want to see what Louisiana can do against Jacksonville State, because Jacksonville State 8-4 coming into it. Louisiana 6-6. So Jacksonville State is a 3.5-point favorite. So when you think about stuff like that, you're like, all right, this is going to be fun to watch. You would think that Louisiana would have it. Saran Neal is from Jacksonville State and played there. So for tying it back, always tying it back to the Bills. But when you think about what that looks like, I mean, Jacksonville State, so close, right? Had a great season, made the leap, came up to us. And so I always like to look at App State and Miami of Ohio. When you think about that, what does that look like? Miami of Ohio, they played really well in the MAC. And 11-2 is a pretty good record right now. So, when you think about that, all right, look, that should be a fun game. I mean, you got UCLA and Boise State. I just think about Boise State and the blue turf and the Statue of Liberty and all those things from back in the day. But that will probably be the game that I will watch that evening, just because more of a traditional powerhouse, teams that I'm used to watching. And John Fina's son, Bruno Fina, will be in that game playing. So
we should check. We should definitely
watching for that.
Definitely check that out, right? Bruno Fina is having a good year, and that's having definitely a really good year. A rooting interest. And, we had Jerry Ostrowski on last week, and we talked about what it's like to be a parent of a college football player. Now, I'm assuming John will probably be at the bowl game, rooting on his son.
Absolutely.
What a cool experience. What an amazing experience to be playing big time college football at UCLA and getting a bowl game against, like you said, a famous program in Boise State. These are good games. And the nice thing is, Marlon, it doesn't end on Saturday. We go right to Monday, Monday, 2:30 p.m. on a Monday. For those of us who might consider themselves a tad bit underemployed, that's not a bad deal. The Western Kentucky Old Dominion game, I might be able to tune into that one for a little while at Monday at 2:30. What a random. Now that's the Bahamas Bowl. You remember that famous video a few years back where the team did the reveal of which game they were going to go to, and they narrowed it down on the big screen, and it came down to the Motor City Bowl or the Quick Lane Bowl, whatever it is in Detroit, and the Bahamas Bowl, and then they all went crazy when they got to go to the Bahamas Bowl. But this game's not in the Bahamas. It's in Charlotte, because the Bahamas Stadium, I guess, was deemed like unfit. So the
Yeah.
Bahamas Bowl is being
So
played at Jerry Richardson Stadium in Charlotte, North Carolina. What a letdown.
that's, yeah. I would like think about when you're like, hey, we're going to the Bahamas. What? No, you're not going to the Bahamas Bowl.
You're
You're
going to no, you know, I mean, you and I are here in lovely Buffalo in December, so we don't have a lot of right to talk.
Hey, it's been
But
40 degrees and 60
yeah,
degrees last week. I mean, it doesn't look like Buffalo weather, and
no,
I'm not
but
upset at all.
Charlotte ain't the Bahamas. You know,
True.
Tuesday night we got University of Texas San Antonio against Marshall. There's almost a bowl game a day.
Yeah.
You know, and then you know, a week from Thursday, South Florida is playing Syracuse. And my buddy Pat, who's a sports management professor at Syracuse University, is really thrilled with the hire of their coach. He's gotten a bunch of 4-star recruits coming in. He was the wide receiver coach at Georgia, and he was known as one of the best recruiters in the country. And the caliber of athlete that's even visiting Syracuse, he keeps updating me every day. Oh, I got another 4-star here. Got another 4-star here. So there's some excitement in Syracuse, and it's always better. It's always better when Syracuse is pretty good.
Yes, definitely in our backyard, not too far from here. So I'm rooting, and I'll be watching that game. I will be rooting for Syracuse for certain. And I do know some people that went to South Florida. So sorry, I cannot root for South Florida. So yeah.
Well, we're gonna leave it there. Any final thoughts you have about, you know, either the game Saturday or any, you know, fun final bowl memory? Was there one moment at like a press conference or a funny story like traveling to the game or anything that you could leave everybody with from any of your bowl games?
You know, nothing too crazy. I just remember just the fact that the Holiday Bowl, you know, was for a different reason, but the Citrus Bowl was just a totally different experience. It was so much fun. You got to spend so much time with Alabama players, and I just remember we had a squeeze off, like you go down to the Citrus Bowl, and what do they give you? Orange juice, like like bottles of orange juice everywhere. Like I'm thinking to myself, like I would move to Florida just for the orange juice alone. Just how delicious it was, how fresh tasting it was. And so we had a little battle going on back and forth of just squeezing out oranges. Who could fill up enough orange juice into a container, and you had to get it to a certain level. And we won, and I got a Mickey Mouse trophy. So I remember
great.
I took the Mickey Mouse. I'm like, I'm keeping this, and I'm taking it home. And I don't have it here. I left it in Columbus. So
was it a whole team event?
Trophies. It was a team event, but I think I was up there squeezing with a couple of other guys, and so we were just going back and forth, just squeezing orange juice, and we ended up winning it. So that was kind of our consolation prize. Was we got the trophy of saying we squeezed the most orange juice out of it. So I do have a Mickey Mouse trophy, but it was just such a fun experience of going to the Citrus Bowl, and just they definitely took care of us down there. So, you know, to every athlete who's going, and if you're a family traveling, safe travels, happy holidays to all of you. And then just watch it. Like if you're trying to become and decide if you want to be a college football fan, this is the way you can really get into college football and kind of just see what it's like. You get to kind of know new faces, new players for next season. Because there will be some guys who decide not to play for financial reasons and for NFL reasons. So you can watch the next generation and get a head start. And it's not a lot of games. You don't have to worry about, like, I got to watch 5 games. It's one game. It'll be going now. You'll get a lot of games on Saturday, but then next week it's pretty much one a day. Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, you'll be back. So you don't have the big slate.
The Monday 2:30 p.m. special. That's
yes.
That one I'll forget that it's coming on, and then I'll get a chuckle when I see that it is on, and I'll reference back to our show. That's a great story. It reminds me of remember that old show, The Superstars, where they had guys like do the obstacle course and all those different things. And it seems like those would be the fun events, right? The game is obviously what it is, but it's all the stuff beforehand. And that sounds like a really fun time with your teammates and being a college kid in Florida. Not a bad deal. Not a bad deal for a week.
Not a bad deal at all.
All right. Well, we'll leave it there for everybody. This will go up later this week, and then we'll be back next week. We'll get a little bit more into some of the bigger bowl games. And, you know, maybe Marlon will jog his memory for another story or two about bowl season.
Absolutely.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Please like and subscribe.